So, I was really drunk when Dead Rising 3 was announced. By the end of the trailer, when it was revealed to be Xbone exclusive, I was still drunk. Perhaps actually more so. I actually woke up later that same day, hungover, and I thought that it didn't happen. Turns out it did though. However, I was not drunk when the PC port was announced a while later. That would have either been one hell of a coincidence, or the longest drinking sesh ever. I mean, it's still somewhat Xbox One exclusive. The PC port is pretty terrible. It was playable for me, despite seemingly not wanting to be. I had to do some bullshit to make this game allow me to record it without throwing a fit. And even then, I've got these lovely black bars to show for it. They just frame the action so well. If it's any consolation, despite my having messed with it, it did make a consistent 30 FPS. You can force 60, but I decided to play the game as the developers intended, and I'd already screwed up doing that much. It also reset my graphics options every time I launched the game back, down to their lowest settings, which was weird and inconvenient, and I placed the emphasis wrong in that sentence. Now, I love the Dead Rising games. 1 and 2, can't recommend them enough. They're a unique mix of survival, action, time management, and stupid yet enjoyable protagonists. A nice mix of a story taking itself somewhat seriously whilst the gameplay is silly and self-aware, much like Metal Gear or Yakuza. And, while not exactly hard, the games can be challenging, particularly if you go for 100% completion. Plus, of course, there is the whole catharsis of killing zombies. 1 is a game that I only appreciate more as time goes by, despite its weird quirks, particularly with Survivor AI, and while 2 is not quite as good overall, I have beaten it many times over thanks to co-op, and I rarely replay games once, but I've gladly replayed Dead Rising 2 a great many times. I had nearly beaten Dead Rising 3 once prior to this, and that was with a friend in co-op, but connection issues screwed that up on what would turn out to be the final mission. And neither of us felt a need to finish the game solo, so it was dropped. I have no idea what compelled me to review Dead Rising 3, let alone replay it at all, but here we are. In replaying it, I can't help but compare it to its forebears. Seriously, prepare for tons of comparisons. It is the weakest in its series, but still quite a fun game, and despite all the comparisons I'm about to make, I will also try to evaluate how it stands on its own. Right, so the story isn't called 72-hour mode anymore, because it's now a week long, and I guess 168-hour mode just sounds pretty cumbersome. It's been 10 years since Dead Rising 2. Frank and Chuck have done basically fuck all since raiding one Fenotrans facility in the desert from way back when. I mean, Fenotrans is kind of in the shit? Maybe? It's a little bit vague. So the world at large has just been existing in a kind of zombie limbo. Then there's an outbreak in LA, or Los Perdidos as they decided to rename it. Slightly more considerate than renaming a place where everyone died Fortune City, I suppose. Following the events of Dead Rising 2, infected people have been given mandatory Zombrex chips, delivering doses of the drug automatically, at the cost of the chip also tracking your every movement. So yeah, some people didn't go for it, which is a bit illegal. In fact, they call them that. Illegals. We join Nick, our protagonist, 3 days after the initial outbreak, looking for a quarantine zone. He's a bit disappointed when he finds a quarantine zone that doesn't seem to be keeping in humans, and is doing poorly besides. He flees back into the city, directly through a tutorial about eating, hitting stuff harder, shooting, running, and running faster. Valuable skills all, doubly so in a zombie apocalypse. Nick regroups with some other survivors, including his boss Rhonda, his co-op partner Dick, who will contribute nothing in this review, and an illegal named Annie who is distrusted by all but Nick, and had her twist called in about 2 seconds flat by the guy I was co-oping it with. I'm certain I'd have had it in 3 if he hadn't beat me to it.
Parents?
Don't have any.
Me neither.
Yeah, sometimes you're better off that way.
Despite zombies having been around for about 20 years at this point, it does seem that a few twats have slipped through Death's fingers up until this point, and someone just has to go and fuck up. Annie fucks off. Nick grabs a sledgehammer, grabs a saw, and makes both of them worse before busting out and heading for a garage that Rhonda runs. On the news, we get the not-so-cheery message that the city of Los Perdidos is going to be firebombed in 7 days, whereupon Nick decides to pull some crazy bullshit.
Damn, honey. Hell, you could probably make more of these out on the road now that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, naturally. You make one of those in a workshop, it's pretty much the same, just throwing together a tank on the sidewalk. How much faith do you have in him? Remember when zombies were an issue? I do. Then he guns it for another quarantine zone. This one just a few streets and a streaming highway away. Once there, it's revealed that this one is even worse than the last. This forces the formerly pacifistic Nick to murder about 11 people consecutively and violently.
Hey, what's wrong, sugar?
He's never killed anyone before.
Well, except the Chinese guy about an hour ago. But that doesn't really count, that was more beating him until he killed himself.
Oh God.
So that too was a bust. And the group sods off again, running into Diego, some bloke that Nick knew growing up. Diego knows where a plane is, and knows that Nick can fix it. I'd question that, but considering what just happened, his confidence does seem well placed. Then Nick is bit. So everyone else sods off to the plane, and Nick is left to go find Zombrex at the morgue. This bite not only opens up Nick's arm, but also the start of our free-roaming shenanigans. Well, okay, actually that happened about an hour ago, but I arbitrarily decided this was a better point to segue. And it leaves you in suspense about Nick's zombification. So yeah, for those watching this review with no knowledge of Dead Rising, hi. This is the third entry, and it's gonna be spoiled rotten. It's a third-person zombie brawler at heart. Funny enough, the closest comparison I can grab for the core gameplay is that of an incredibly polished State of Decay rather than an evolution of Dead Rising 1 and 2. The structure of the previous games is still somewhat there. You are trapped in an isolated environment and set against the clock in a race to complete story missions and side objectives, with a mass of zombies and crazed psychopaths standing in your way. Now with the added difficulty of a far larger map with collectibles, all of which are marked on the minimap right from the off so you don't actually have to look for any of them. This game is not harder, however. One of my biggest gripes with Dead Rising 3 is the massive step down in difficulty, and the addition of convenience features that don't really add anything. They just strip out intentional challenges that previous games had. Aside from combo vehicles and improved driving, nothing new has been added to the mix whatsoever. So the game is larger, but it feels more bare bones for it all. The combat has seen a bit of an overhaul. There are now separate buttons for light and heavy attacks. The previous games did have heavy attacks, but these were just achieved by holding down the button. This mostly means that you can combo between light and heavy attacks, but it doesn't really matter all that much. In every case where heavy isn't some form of alt-fire mode, it's just plain better to spam heavy attacks now. There is also grappling, but it's not really all that noteworthy. But there is a combo kill meter that allows you to pull off special attacks in place of a grapple for loads of PP, and these are a bit more fun to watch. The main change to the combat is how much more flexible it is. Dead Rising 1 and 2 are quite rigid. You do an attack and you are dedicated to it. If you fuck up, the most you can do is hope for mashing the dodge button and hoping the attack ends before you get got. So careful timing or a fast weapon were valuable. Whilst not slow, it felt stiff. Combined with the damage sponge boss fights and cardboard zombies, this worked. It was unique and enjoyable. Despite sounding like it really shouldn't be, it is, okay? Trust me. Dead Rising 3 is a lot faster. Nick swings wider, zombies die easier, psychopaths die easier, you can turn mid-attack and dodge to cancel out of hits a lot faster. It's more reaction-based than previous games. However, the difficulty of the enemies has not been cranked up to keep pace with how much more powerful Nick is. Besides that, I can't complain about it. The catharsis factor is still intact, hitting things still feels weighty, and while the zombies are easier than ever, even the special zombies who can take quite a bit of a beating aren't that much to write home about, it remains enjoyable to clobber the undead. Also, don't ask me, because no, I have no fucking idea what's wrong with this room. The bigger crowds do also help off-put this somewhat. Plus, Nick's unlockable melee attacks aren't as memorable as Frank or Chuck's movesets, being more based on those combo kills than anything else. Besides that, he gets the jump kick and the knee drop that you had in Dead Rising 1. The only complaints I have about Control are to do with movement. It is for the most part fine. You're more nimble than ever, you can scale walls, get around easy. There is now a sprint button, but Nick becomes nigh impossible to turn when in a sprint. The man himself has poor handling. And while there is a level up that speeds it up a bit, it's still pretty slow. So, the core gameplay is decently fun, but I still prefer the clunkiness the earlier games had. It was part of their appeal, because it's what gave them a decent chunk of their challenge. A restrictive or rigid combat system is not bad by itself, It comes down to what the game is trying to achieve with it, and the reason why it's restrictive. There are games where you play a character who's fast and controls fluidly, because it'd be fucking impossible if it felt like your character was swinging a bag full of bricks whatever they did. And while that's a bit of an exaggeration for Dead Rising, the combat was built with you being a bit lumbering in mind. Now you're just faster than everything. This all said, it's still fun. That can't be taken away from it. My main complaints against this game are to do with difficulty and structure, so I'll begin with my biggest issue and work down, and that begins with the world map. Due to the added focus on driving and the insane combo vehicles, the game world is decently sizable. It's also one big streaming map, rather than a bunch of differing zones separated by load screens. So, rather than a 10, maybe 20 second load time, to switch between areas you instead drive down the same large stretches of highway, having had to procure a vehicle which will probably break before too long, each time you want to switch between one of the 4 sections the city of the game has. And while each one of them has a distinct character, it's not as pronounced as the more dense and compact maps from before. That, and I would generally take smaller and concentrated over sprawling and nothing any day. They are filled to the brim with one thing though: roadblocks. Fucking roadblocks everywhere, making navigation a fucking pain. Navigating from A to B is a cluttered mess. The driving itself is fair, not outstandingly good or bad, but it's not helped by what you have to work with. The road network is a bloody mess, and you will be driving a lot as objectives are typically spaced quite far apart. The previous games were also designed around a back and forth. The safe house to drop off escorted survivors, combo rooms to create stronger weapons, and toilets to save in. Knowing these things were important, so learning where each of them was, and knowing how to quickly shortcut back and forth between them, was a rewarding thing to learn. This isn't really necessary anymore. Nick can save anywhere, build on the fly, and does not have to bother all that much with survivors. So that element of the previous games is gone. Unlockable safe houses are pretty common, so they could have easily preserved at least some of this. What they actually do now is operate as small hubs where you can swap clothes, spawn weapons at very little cost, seriously, the restock timer is incredibly lenient, and call in survivors to act as backup, which, while a fun-sounding feature, is something I never really wanted to use. A smaller but still annoying issue is that the map screen no longer tells you the name of stores when you scroll over them. This is exacerbated, however, due to the drop in the importance of safe houses. Now most Survivor side missions are fetch quests, so it's a bit of a bastard to not be able to check the map to see what shops are about when you start looking for whatever they're after. It basically stops you from making an educated guess. Then again, in some cases you could just go to a safe house and spawn whatever the fetch questee wants. There are also those new collectibles lying about. Frank statues some sod spilled all over the city to grab, and ZDC speakers to destroy, both of which are purely for PP and cosmetic rewards. Perhaps the most bizarre collectible, and I'm talking in general, not exclusive to this game, are tragic ends. Collectible, unfunny death puns. Now, that might just be my favourite string of words I've ever said in a review. I am seriously curious who at Capcom Vancouver was tasked with littering a few noteworthy corpses amongst the thousands knocking about. As stated earlier, there are unlockable safe houses scattered rather liberally around the map, so if you had to escort survivors it'd be a cinch. Funny enough, the best way to ensure the safety of survivors now is to run away, hop in a car, and fucking floor it. Leaving them behind gives them the will and bitterness to magically walk to a safe house. If only Frank had it so easy. Most importantly, there are blueprints. You don't get scratch cards, or get to discover or intuit combo weapons anymore. You collect everything you can create, and the blueprint always lies near its components. So crafting is actually 2 steps easier, in that you don't need a workshop for it, and you don't even need to craft it thereafter, making the whole thing so much simpler. It works, however. The craft time is negligible, but it does make you vulnerable to attack, so it's kinda balanced well. I do dislike that you can't experiment and have to be told explicitly what makes what, but it works. Also, all collectibles are marked on the map. Considering how much I dislike the map, I'm having some cognitive dissonance about this, because whilst I dislike how it means there are no surprises, I am also glad that I don't have to dig through the rubble to find things, especially combos at the risk of the one I find being shit. Most of the combo weapons from Dead Rising 2 return, along with some new entries, of course. The only noteworthy stuff I can recall are things like the Mecha Dragon, the Grim Reaper, which, okay, that was technically an off the record, but it's actually good here, and the Tsar. There are, of course, other weapons, but there are a lot of variants on stuff you already have. I'm always disappointed when I find another Freedom Bear or RC helicopter, because it feels like there are tens of these things I never use. The Grim Reaper and Mecha Dragon also have about 5 different versions that are functionally similar, up until an ultimate version that would be more effort to craft, if you even had to do that much. Then there are combo vehicles. 30 or so overall, a good variety, but I only ever wanted to use the Roller Hog, which is unlocked early, and is pretty much the best all-around vehicle, with very little competition competing for that spot. Also, much like weapons, you don't really need to go to any effort to get good ones. You can spawn each of them near infinitely. Driving has seen the biggest improvement overall, not that that was a tall order. Rather than merely existing, it's now okay, which is a mild improvement, but still an improvement. The vehicles handle fine, even if they're a little floaty. Running down crowds of zombies is enjoyable, and holy hell, pushing through a crowd just feels right. There is an actual sense of the horde crashing against you. The combo vehicles are satisfying to use, and I would enjoy driving around. The thing is, outside of one mission near the opening, and about 2 parts where you have to drive from A to B, driving is never utilised for missions. Vehicles exist merely to get you to objectives, and none of the objectives make an interesting use out of them. So, either the vehicles are better because of the bigger map, or the bigger map exists to facilitate the better vehicles. And the shame of it all is, it comes back to that bloody map. Compared to quite a few open world games, the map isn't all that large, which is good. It is, however, cluttered and inconvenient, which just makes it annoying to navigate both on foot and otherwise. Every time a new side mission or story objective came up on the other side of the city, I'd be more irritated than anything else, because it meant another trek across one of the bloody highways that are more annoying and long than a load screen ever was. Not that getting to the highway itself is much fun either. The map kills most potential enjoyment I could get out of the vehicles. It's bad to start with. Around the start of the game, I'd constantly be pausing and checking the map to make sure I wasn't driving towards a dead end. And then it gets worse. As the days go by, the roads get more blockaded by the army and the biker gangs that pop up as the plot progresses. Getting from A to B is the hardest thing this game has to offer. Mostly because it's so bloody easy. I cleared the main story, got the best ending, cleared every side mission and Psychopath the game threw my way, and I had 2 days spare on the clock. All of this without dying once. There were close calls, I will admit, but still, not one death. And this was done starting from a level 1 character, a completely fresh save. This isn't bragging. Dead Rising 3 is trivially easy. Incredibly easy in relation to Dead Rising 1 and 2, and still a very easy game in its own right. I would not have been able to pull off that bullshit in 1 or 2. I'd have a lot of trouble doing it in Dead Rising 1, and it would definitely remain tricky in 2, and I'm talking with a leveled up character. Replaying this in single player did make it a bit less of an issue, and it did make me look at it a bit more favourably in this regard, as the difficulty doesn't scale for 2 players. So, Dead Rising 3 is easy no matter what, but the moment a second player joins, it basically lies in the corner and says, no, please kick the shit out of me. That's surely what the 2 of you are here for. In single player, all it does is present its shins. A lot of this does come back to Nick being rather powerful and having far more resources at his command than beforehand. Weapon lockers provide near infinite backups of anything you've held once before, including super combo weapons, the ability to combine food items for superfoods on the fly, rather than a need for blenders, providing constant access to very powerful healing items and power-up effects, the level up system now allowing you to pick and choose what you want, and while this does lead to empty levels, Nick gets very powerful very quickly, and PP has never been so plentiful. And then there's the Tsar. Once you get to the point where any 2 firearms can combine into a semi-automatic shotgun that also sets things on fire, you may as well quit because victory is assured. Actually getting there yourself is just a formality. The Psychopaths are hit the hardest by this, which sadly only kills them faster. I love the boss fights in this series. They are tough and memorable. They meld well with the rest of the game because not only are they tricky damage sponges, but you have to down them quickly because you're on the clock. not to mention grabbing food, getting good weapons, do all of this in a timely manner. They should feel like slogs, but thanks to interesting movesets, memorable personalities, and the fact that they're taking not only your health, but time from you, it turns them into tense but enjoyable drag-out brawls. Meanwhile, these fucks are pushovers. Did they mix up the damage values somewhere along the line? Bullets are not supposed to hurt you. You're insane. That insanity confers immunity to this. On the other hand, you're a faceless mook. Die faster. Plus, I've cleared this checkpoint 3 times already. Stop sending people here. The fights are complete jokes. Health totals have seemingly been lowered across the board in conjunction with the faster pace of the combat, so boss fights are overall quicker affairs. However, Nick is still decently sturdy, and like I said, he has access to superfood all the time. That and the enemy movesets are just dull and uninteresting. They're all predictable and slow, which might have worked better had this handled like the previous games, where you had to be more deliberate and pick your shots carefully, but now I'm playing this like a brawler and you guys haven't kept up. Look, the reason I'm punching you to death is because I want us to have roughly even odds. Another issue is that the lineup of bosses is really forgettable. They lack the same level of personality that I'm used to. They're less cartoonishly evil, more grounded, and in this case I would not say that's a good thing. Outside of one fight, I did not have an emotional reaction to any of the bosses. Granted, that one did fucking stick with me, grossed me the fuck out. And that was what they were going for, and she is the one that feels most on point. A cartoonish concept, executed with humour, with an interesting gimmick to the fight. I do dislike gross out humour, but at least it fucking stuck with me. Plus, the number of bosses is comparable to previous entries, but they have been spread further apart and it just feels like there are less overall. You know, since one is just a soldier with more health. And then there are a couple of truly unengaging gimmick boss fights. One that's based on hallucinations, and one where a man sends very weak toy helicopters at you while you destroy power boxes. Then he has a heart attack when you actually reach him. Then he farts. The in-game clock is now 7 days as opposed to 3, so it's far more forgiving. I cleared the game with time spare, so I have no clue if I had side missions left over, but I did get everything that was presented to me. Here, old lady, have a Gatling gun. It's always nice to record inconsequential lines that you find amusing when you're coming down with a cold. Now, I have never wholeheartedly gone for 100% run in either of the other games. When I do play, I tend to clear every side mission thrown my way and keep on top of the main quest. It's tricky but doable. There are close calls and failures as you juggle escorting survivors with staying stopped for psychopaths as you make laps across the map back and forth. It would not be hard here. You have all the time in the bloody world. Time management was an enjoyable element because it lent weight to every call you made. Every fuck-up cost time. Survivors would slow you down and psychopaths drained resources. And you have to keep on top of everything with the story looming overhead. Now, imagine what this looks like to the average viewer outside Los Perdidos. Yeah, we're giving the zombies a week to enjoy the city and then surrender, or we bomb the shit out of them. Oh, and the Prez is in there, I suppose. It's also kinda hurt because the main story is no longer tied to specific times. They just kinda come up as you clear them, so maybe just rush the side missions alongside with them? Not certain. But, yeah. There is Nightmare mode, and I've played about 3 hours of it. It's hard mode, basically. Tougher enemies, weaker Nick. You have to save in safe houses or bathrooms, and the time limit has been drastically reduced. I didn't play much of this mode, I really couldn't make myself replay the game again, so this is more my early impressions. The zombies and psychopaths don't change much at all from what I saw. Still sodding easy. Granted, the level ups that carried over helped, so this part may have been salvaged somewhat. Time, on the other hand, now has the exact opposite problem. You have fucking none. Look at this shit. And it's going quickly. Dead Rising 1 and 2 felt really considered in this regard. Side missions were doled out carefully, keeping things tense but manageable, especially if you knew when and where things would happen. This is not well considered, this is fucking overload. Can everyone in this city please not fuck up all at once? Be considerate and beef it in an orderly manner. And you know, it really does not help that the side missions aren't all that fun anyway. I would take straight up escort missions over what we have here. I mean, there are a couple of escort missions, and they are worse than what we had prior, because it's survivor checkpoints rather than a simple trip back to the safe house. Oh, for crying out loud, this woman wants a tour of the entire city. The city which I hate.
I got a little tipsy on the gin, but Frederick and I, we did like to have us some good times.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
There's some bloke in a bunker who has a two-way radio and some security cameras, so he'll be our requisite quest giver this time around. Right, what you got for us?
But I can't leave without my car! The wind blew them right out of my hand. They could be anywhere now, anywhere!
Listen, they need fresh meat.
Well, all I need is propane tank, some acetylene. My baby will be purring like Cousin Daisy.
Bring me some of that meat. I want to show you something.
Ah, right, mostly fetch quests. Get people some shit. Well, at least this guy was considerate. Perhaps aid in the creation of zombie porn. The most memorable was some guy who wanted a foot race. It wasn't very fun though. That's all I have to say about it. Drive around town and blow up trucks? Sure, I wasn't tired of driving around town already, and I need the valuable experience getting tired of it. Now just fuck the side missions. There's plot at the graveyard. So, at the morgue, Nick meets Gary. Fat mobster on the hunt. My favourite character in the game, bar none.
Working there? Can you help me?
In that? No, not that kind of job. No, my boss is kind of a big shot around here. He helps people who are, desperate.
So he's a crook.
Hey, don't be rude. I like to say kingpin. I think it sounds a little classier.
Gary's looking for Annie on her father's orders. I'll spoil that now. And Nick's after Zombrex. And Annie. However, neither knows the other is after Annie, and neither gets what they want at the morgue.
Hey, do you want me to off you? So you don't gotta suffer.
Just hurry.
All right, okay, I'm hurrying. Coming right up.
Oh my God.
I think the safety's on.
Can I see the gun? Let me see the gun.
By the way, you're welcome.
We just do it?
Well, Nick does get immunity to the zombie virus, and subconsciously he probably did want that. Plus Gary did get a corpse that's a bit like what he's actually after, and has Nick deliver that to a strip joint. It's there the two come to an agreement. Fuel for the plane in exchange for Annie.
I don't know if I could do that to her. It's nothing personal, but...
All right. Well, don't let the big bomb hit you in the ass on your way.
Everyone back at the hangar is in favour of this, so Nick, despite being conflicted, heads off to find the illegal rebels that Annie is aligned with. Now, I realise that in most cases rebellion is illegal, but these are illegals who also happen to be rebels. Grammatically, hopefully, that checks out. Nick has to do some jobs to get in with them. So Nick is sent on a rather lengthy jaunt to destroy military equipment, murder soldiers, and infiltrate a police station that might just be swarming with the military to nab a file. All of this to be done solo.
Oh, adorable. I do so love a hero wannabe. Let's see if he stands up to the test, or limps out at the end.
War crimes and sex jokes ensue. Nick gets the file and heads on back to the rebels. Despite the raw efficiency Nick has put on display, Red isn't all that impressed by Nick, because he's a bit of a whiny bitch who nonetheless thoroughly destroys everything that's put in his path. A bit later, back at the rebel base, Gary turns up and ambushes everyone.
I told him where I was. I trusted you, asshole.
Oh, calm down, lady. It's not his fault. I figured you didn't have the balls to follow through, so I followed you.
I'm glad that he absolves Nick of guilt whilst kidnapping someone. Good guy. Then the army turns up and ambushes everyone and Gary. They take all the rebels prisoner, but they leave Nick. I guess gunning them down earlier that same day taught them some mercy. Now, I'm going to spoil something. Part of the reason they're in this city is explicitly to capture Nick. So I'm glad. These were either the loveliest or most forgetful soldiers going. Red finds Nick completely fine, and in return for that mercy the two decide to attack an army base head on. We head off to bust out the rebels and, more importantly, Gary from their imprisonment, and also gun down a few more troops on the way. As we're loudly gunning them down, Nick gets to stop and hear Malin, the head of Fenotrans in Dead Rising 2, and Hemlock, US Army Big Cheese guy. They talk about their plans involving kidnapping Diego, whilst also zombifying the President of the United States for reasons that help their plan, but for reasons I can't remember that may not exist. Everyone rescued, a few more soldiers shot for the trouble, Red stands far away and claims to provide covering fire whilst Nick does all the actual work. Then Red is not impressed because Nick has only slaughtered one military base in his career.
Extremely dangerous, my ass.
What the fuck does Nick qualify as? Mostly harmless? It's at this point we learn that the soldiers turned down $5 million by not capturing Nick. So that's cool. Does that mean someone's going to betray me for it later? Please be you, Red. You annoy me. Oh hey, that's fuel. Now we don't need to hand Annie over. Good thing too, as Nick punched Gary in the face earlier to stop that from happening. Gary takes it in stride because he's a good bloke.
Put your lights out. I guess I owe you one.
Oh, also there's a zombie beehive thing. It's a bit of a pushover. Anyway, let's get the fuel and forget about that. Back at the hangar, Diego has seemingly snapped and fucked off to a museum. He's waiting there in anticipation of being a really easy boss fight. We calm Diego down by shooting him a lot, which calms down most people, typically on a more permanent basis. This insanity was brought on by something Diego saw at the museum. A picture of a man with a similar tattoo to that of his and Nick's. What could it mean? Oh look, a room full of lore. This might be my favourite area in the game, just for this. It does a good job catching you up on all the story so far, whilst also filtering it with whitewashing and lies. Dead Rising 3 in general does a good job expanding on the events of Dead Rising 1 and 2. Particularly 1, funnily enough. 2 is a bit more in the background. I also like the explanation for how the outbreak came about, because, come on, it's been 20 years. The dumb people should be overwhelmingly dead by this point. The Zombrex chips, man. Government just switched them off for a goof. Well, and for some dumb, nefarious scheme. Honestly, just for a goof would have been a better reason than what we have in store. Hoo boy. Nick and Diego head back to the hangar. It's at this point Rhonda has worked out what the plane needs, and has lined up a handy fetch quest for it. So we do that, grabbing the materials. Fetch quest sorted, planes fixed, and Rhonda says a heartfelt goodbye, deciding to remain in the city to search for her ex-husband. Nick remains in the city due to kidnapping and experimentation 2 seconds later. Better late than never, I guess, Army. With the amount Nick gets knocked out in this plot, he's surviving equally on skill and other people's good graces. Diego is killed via laser beam, and Nick breaks free, kicking the shit out of some servo arms on the way out. It's here he runs into Isabella Keyes, who was important about 20 years ago, and is trying to recapture that importance now. But this is interrupted by Malin. So the two agree to meet back at the plane, and explanations are put off. Like every other threat in this game, she is very easily dealt with.
Getting the hell out of this city. Taking my friends with me. Where's that damn karaoke bar?
Nick decides he should probably find Annie, so he sods off to Gary, and it turns out she's captured right behind him. Gary misses his ex-wife Rhonda, and Nick laughs as everything lines up. Gary then presents us with a very easy choice that determines the ending you get. Either kill him, right then and there, or go get Rhonda. I'm going to say, I had to look up how to get the endings beside ending S, because I assumed that was just some cutscene melodrama. The thought of killing Gary when gameplay resumed didn't actually cross my mind whatsoever. So I basically followed orders and blundered my way to the golden ending without even thinking about it. 'Cause I went and got Rhonda, who had been tortured, mutilated, and left alive by the soldiers standing around outside her garage. We build her a robot arm and head on back to Gary. The two are reunited, we grab Annie and fuck off back to the hangar. Oh hey Isabella, what'd you have for us? A recap of Dead Rising 1? Great! Nick and Diego were two of Carlito's orphans, his zombie time bombs planted around the United States. Because he was also a super scientist, he managed to make an immune kid. Something no one else in the last 20 years has had the chops to do. Malin lied about a cure in Case West, and that's the closest anyone else has gotten. So, Nick is the wonder child. But this is good and all, but, Red, can we have a betrayal? Ah, thank you very much. And you did it yourself as well.
Saw that flyer? I realized that was the closest to $5 million that I ever was gonna get. So guess what? I got your friends. You are my $5 million. So let's make an exchange. I'm gonna kill you with my bare fucking hands, you son of a bitch!
Thank fuck you betrayed Nick. Now I get to beat you up.
Everybody gets shit. I wanted it to be my time.
But you're right about one thing. What? It is your time.
Cheers, Annie. Now he's dead. So, everyone's happy, about to leave this mess behind, get on the plane and head for brighter days, having learned a lesson about trust, friendship, and mass murder. Then the game decides to pull in some fan service. I'm pretty sure people would have preferred a contrived Frank West, but then again, this is the twist that was called immediately. Annie is Kate, and Hemlock is across town shouting his plans from the rooftops before throwing Malin off of them. He wants zombies because they're somehow the new neutron bomb. He's stealing zombie beehives with flying scoops all across town. Nick and Chuck team up to stop this. And, well, you're not impressing me, Chuck, I'm just going to say it. The final objective is pretty easy, just incredibly long and boring. Kinda like how the whole game has been for the last few hours. We drive across town shooting at zombie lifters. Then Nick clambers onto the VTOL, causes it to crash, and Hemlock is the final boss. It goes how you would expect a fight between an old man and a young, improbably skilled, and well-equipped homicidal mechanic would. His shit is thoroughly kicked in. I want you to understand the full extent to which his shit was kicked in. I defeated the final boss of a video game by stamping on his toes.
Your lady friend Marion was right. I am the cure. Carlito made me immune.
You think you got it all figured out, don't you? You know nothing!
Well, here's something I do know. There is no cure for this.
Fuck you!
And Nick has become so blasé about murder. And that's Dead Rising 3. Nick escapes the city and distributes the cure in a text crawl. So, the story is serviceable. It does build well on Dead Rising 1 and 2, and while I'd think you'd need to have played those games to get the most out of it, it does a decent job bringing people up to speed. There are a few contrivances, such as the amount of times Nick is not captured, and how much Gary forgives Nick's bullshit. The antagonists, much like the Psychopaths, are nowhere near as memorable as Carlito or TK. Hell, the commander who turns up at the end of Dead Rising 1 has more of an impact in his one scene than Hemlock does with a whole game of build-up. The undercurrent of dark comedy the previous games had, with snarky above-it-all protagonists and silly over-the-top villains doing really evil shit, is lost in the more macabre tone as well, and it doesn't really replace it with anything. There are moments of levity, but they are far more exclusive to the gameplay side of things. One thing I do like is the character of Nick himself. There is something innately funny to me about making the protagonist of a game about murdering thousands of zombies and a good dozen violent nutcases without breaking a sweat a squeamish coward. It's a joke that works well and does not outstay its welcome. Over the course of the story, Nick goes from a pansy to confident and even cocky, and it's handled really well. It's gradual and reflected in the in-game dialogue as well.
That was close.
His panicked screams and desperate cries change to him taunting the zombies and bosses while destroying them just as effectively as he had before. The use of in-game dialogue is spot on in showing this transition. I do imagine slaughtering over 10,000 zombies, battalions of soldiers, and crazed killers would work wonders for one's confidence. I mean, it's either that or crippling PTSD. But wait, there's more! An after-credits scene reveals the big twist! Isabella was behind it all! She orchestrated the outbreak to make the immune child reveal himself, so she could find him and redeem her family name. I'm impressed. Really. Genuinely. Seriously. That's incredibly fucking stupid. It's so stupid, it's pointed out how stupid that is. Then she does it anyway. Hey, you should probably delete that file. It kind of exposes you as a monster and a moron. Good. Good job. This whole thing would have been a complete cock-up if Nick had, I don't know, got shot to death by the army, or had debris land on him, or failed in doing half the dangerous stupid things he did in the plot. Wouldn't it have been deliciously ironic if he was eaten? How's that immunity working out then? Also, why did Carlito have his infected orphans tattooed? He had a database on them, presumably pictures of them. Was that in case he survived Willamette and saw one of them in the street? Was it so he could run up, give him a cheeky wink and a nudge, and then run the fuck away? Dead Rising 3 is ultimately okay, and that is sadly all I can really sum it up as. It's better than average, but not by much. The signature structure and decisively clunky gameplay have both been zoned out and just plain made too easy. The elements are all there and recognisable, but the tone and execution are not quite right. It's hard to say whether someone would like it if they enjoyed the series up to this point, because whatever enjoyment I got out of this game I got in spite of what I had hoped it would be. Which is a bit of an unfair point, but yeah. As it stands on its own, it's an okay zombie brawler with interesting weapons, a plot that despite the number of callbacks does explain itself well without overloading exposition, and a truly terrible world map. There is Nightmare Mode, and there are 4 DLC story chapters that came with the PC version, but after finishing the story I did not feel any compulsion to play these. I got some hours into Nightmare Mode, but it just made the experience worse rather than fine-tuning the issues I had with it. The PC port is also shoddy, and I wouldn't argue this is worth getting an Xbone for.